Hey, it's All Day Live, and it might be next week or the week after or the last week. We don't know. This is WillPWilson. We're All Day Live from Seattle, in Northwest Seattle area of the world that we do our shows from. Public access, community access, all access. If you've accessed, if you all are listening and watching, and we're going to hear from Kurt-Riggin tonight, tribal lawyer, federal lawyer, and one of the most noted legal minds probably in the world, let alone the United States, and respected legal minds. You know that he's doing quite well when a lot of people are scared of him, especially out here in the Northwest. And that's a good thing sometimes not. Of course, we're scared of them too, I guess. We're all supposed to be scared of each other. We don't know, but law is supposed to find remedy. And I'm greatly honored to have one of the greatest legal minds that I have ever met in my life on the show tonight. Kurt-Riggin, and I misspelled his name on the intro. It's R-I-G-G-I-N, not R-I-G-G-I-N-S. So if you catch that, it's spelled without an S. Kurt, it's great to hear you. How are you doing tonight?
Oh, not too bad.
Good. I bet you're worn out. You're busy as always.
Yeah, it's been a busy time of year.
Yeah, I bet. Especially right about this time of year. This isn't just any year, though. You know. But all years are always something new because we have to live through each one of them. I've covered a lot of the medical cannabis, organic medical cannabis, commercial cannabis. I've even interviewed Jamin Shively. Jamin is quite the young man. He's quite aspiring. He's got a lot of courage. He's putting a lot forth trying to move forward with the some odd 330 pot stores, as the Seattle Times has called it. But he's still doing it. It takes a lot of courage to do anything in this state, in this world. Go ahead.
I understand Washington's going to do the same thing for pot that they did for alcohol. Open state-owned stores. State-run, state-owned. And, gee, it worked so well for them in the past.
Yeah. And by the way, I thought I had...
How the hell are they going to do that when marijuana is still a Schedule I drug under their own state schedule?
Yeah,
you know?
I know what you mean. I know.
That it's like, oh, you guys think you're immune from the felonies you're committing? You know, it's like they're regulating a Schedule I drug. You know, and I asked, here in Colorado, I asked the State Department of Health and Environment and the the Senate Judiciary Committee. I said, you know, where does your immunity lie when you guys are regulating a Schedule I drug under your own state schedule that you guys adopted? You know, I understand you adopted the federal schedule, and you haven't changed it. So marijuana is the same legally as heroin or LSD. Isn't that correct?
You got me. I mean, I do know that I have mentioned several times to the state's liquor board chairman, Sharon Foster, and her board members that as I had helped write the 2,000 pages with the OGBA, Organic Growers and Buyers Association, Yvonne Buckley, in the early 1990s, that what all they should probably have to consider is add addendums to that 1991 Organic Certification Farm Bill with the U.S. Senate and state senates, especially Washington Senate, add the addendums to get cannabis and hemp added to that, which then, you know, I mean, who's to say you can't do that? I've mentioned it to him too many times on record. No one seems to listen. Am I wrong about that, though? I mean, is that...
Yeah, they don't want to hear that kind of crap because that, you know, that would make sense.
Yeah, it would, wouldn't it? But it would make sense. And so, you know, but I don't have the funds to do it. They do. I've mentioned this to Jamin Shively. He raised his eyebrows on that statement. We can't make people do things, but we can open up our minds and see things. What's your thoughts as far as Colorado, Washington? You're right in the middle of it in a lot of ways. I noticed that the news from Colorado, you're quite busy as far as helping people there on these issues, including you just had a close raid just 2 nights ago, right?
Yeah, I was over at a friend of mine's house, and he's got stage 4 cancer. prostate cancer.
Right.
And he has 13 plants, and we went and harvested, I don't know, probably about 9 of them. I helped him out. And, hooked him up with the doctor because his paperwork had been expired because he'd been busy being sick, going through treatments and stuff like that. So I got him renewed. And, helped him do a little trimming and stuff. I think he probably had about maybe 6 plants left out in the garden that we hadn't cut down. And we cut down, trimmed his plants. I helped anyways. And the bastards came and raided him the next day.
Really?
They didn't charge him. They didn't arrest him. They said, "Well, you're too sick. We're not going to take you to jail. So we'd have to just have to take you to the hospital. But we're going to take all your pot." So they took all his trimmed weed, and they left the plants that were sitting out in the garden. The 4 or 5 plants that were left out in the garden that we hadn't gotten to.
And he's got cancer.
And he's got stage 4 cancer. So you don't have a lot, it's not like he's got long to live.
It's more like these guys are thugs and gangsters. They're not police. They're just
Exactly. They're like little shithead brat kids that, got a chip on their shoulder and feel that they got to prove something. They're so pissed off about the legalization of pot because it's like you took away their toy. And now they're all worked up about it, because that's a lot of revenue for them. It's a lot of, like in my case, they came and raided my house with a bogus warrant that was signed by a municipal court judge, but he signed it, Judge James White. He signed it as a district court judge, which he never was. And that's kind of problematic. Where I come from, we call that fraud, forgery, perjury, impersonated public official, impersonated officer in the color of law, official misconduct, malfeasance, misfeasance, nonfeasance of office, criminal profiteering, and racketeering and organized crime. And money laundering. Don't forget that.
Right.
So I filed a complaint against Mr. White, and they dismissed the case rather immediately.
Was this in Washington or Colorado?
Snohomish County.
Snohomish County, where they beat you up and tried to kill you.
Yeah, they did their damnedest. Matter of fact, anybody else they would have successfully killed. So I'm the only living case with the bifurcated liver, according to my surgeon.
Right. Amazing what we're dealing with today, and it's never been contested when I brought up the fact that cannabis will be found to help remove nuclear contamination. Now it's already known from the soil and from the water. Experiments with this has proven that, but from the human body. And now that the Pacific Ocean is completely contaminated from Fukushima and depleted uranium munitions particulate from all their illegal wars, cannabis may be the only protein that we may have left to consume, and probably it'll be found that the amino complex from it will also help remove nuclear contamination. I mean, I can only say what I'm saying. So in a sense, we have become a Gestapo-oriented group of gangsters who are going to kill themselves as well by killing the people that are trying to sustain not only themselves, but our culture, our community. And now you got these greedy gangsters. It's almost like the whole system has become a cancer upon itself.
Well, the couple of guys in the drug task force that raided me, through an investigation, I found out that they had regular dealings with a local pawn shop where they were selling anywhere from $300 to $2,000 worth of jewelry on a monthly basis.
These are greedy people, aren't they?
How many sheriff's deputies find jewelry just laying around?
Yeah.
Well, when you raid some so-called alleged drug dealer, it's laying all over his house. Laying his old lady's jewelry box, And in my case, it was laying in my safe. Just laying around, So they help themselves. And, they can only wear so much jewelry, so they usually hook up a deal with the local pawn shop, and they sell it, and they get some cash out of that. I think they were started to wonder when they had Snohomish County Sheriff's deputies that were driving Vipers and Hummers and paid cash for them.
Yeah. It's amazing, Kurt, the time period of history we're in and what these people have no concept of not only what they're doing to their fellow man, their fellow society, their communities, for their own greed, their own avarice, their own power, that they're literally killing their own society, literally. And as we brought out very clearly, even the people in the highest positions that are supposed to be able to be the ones that provide the proper jurisdiction and recommendations and remedy are not. And that the so-called means of that now prevailing, it's like we're on the death knell of our culture and our world, and it's all based on the very composition of the very people that are supposed to be helping provide sustainability, not destroy it. And we're seeing it as based as law enforcement, as judiciary, as legislative bodies, as people in the bureaucracy in charge of it. They can't see anything, and they cannot even see that they are destroying their very own power that they thought they could put themselves at the pinnacle of control. They're about to knock themselves down. I can see it.
Yeah. Well, we're right on the pinnacle of crashing our economy, and Obama's playing the fiddle.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's like, oh yeah, we ain't gonna negotiate. Well,
amazing.
I wonder how far he would have let it go. What if the Republicans said, we aren't either?
Yeah.
Then I guess we would have our total economy would be in the shitter right now.
Right.
We'd be going the worldwide economy would then be based on the Chinese yen, or yuan, I guess that's what it is.
Right.
It'd be based on Chinese currency, not American currency.
The Chinese are they're probably the oldest culture on the planet. They're time tested as far as honor, integrity, whereas we're not as a people. And as they're looking at an alternative media right now, the independent news is providing information that the West is acting like little children, little greedy little children. And yet, if you do your research, these illegal wars that they've created all over the place with depleted uranium meant to kill off the populations within 200 to 300 years. And now Fukushima will actually be the death knell of Japan, because they will be 80% will be dead in 40 years from that Fukushima. We don't need any form of nuclear or oil. We have Brown's gas, which under the orders of Zbigniew Brzezinski, apparently in the NSA, they contaminated him with plutonium, and he died in 1999. I worked with him till he died. One of the top heavy water physicists in history, and all he was trying to help sustain the future of humanity, and no one could ever honor that or respect that. The Chinese tried to, but it is found that nuclear contamination, also as a patent that I authored with Frank Stasny, Michael Wells Mandeville, and Gary Hawkins in 1993, and with Jack Keller, that we found that the plasma of Brown's gas actually neutralizes instantly the nuclear proton, instantly. And not only that, but it can be used to actually transmute the elements. So that might be a monkey wrench in the Rothschilds using fake gold in their so-called fake banking system. And all they're trying to do is create these wars so they can put their banks in these different countries. That's all it's all about, people. And you don't get it all. But by the way, Libya had the largest irrigation system ever designed. And so they went in there right after they finished it so they could turn Libya into the provider of heroin to all of Africa, just like Afghanistan to all of Asia. So they want to have control of the entire world drug trade. These are how greedy, parasitic scum that these characters are, tied to the Bush crime family, as Stu Webb calls it. We're dealing with insanity.
The Taliban, what the Taliban was doing, why we had to get rid of them so bad, is you know what they're doing? They were eliminating poppy fields in Afghanistan.
I wouldn't doubt it.
They said, we got to get our people away from opium and away from the poppies. And they were not allowing anybody to grow opium.
Yeah.
And we said, we can't have that. So we waged war on the Taliban. And the funny part about it is, we're the guys that gave them all their weapons. We're the guys that trained them.
Well, it wasn't we. Wasn't
the
you?
Russians.
It isn't we. It ain't me. It ain't you. And like Art Bell always says, it's not us. It's them.
Our tax dollars. Let's put it that way.
Well, our stolen tax dollars that they stole.
Our stolen tax dollars.
It's them, not us. Not we. Not me. Not you. It's them. Let's get it straight. It isn't even our government anymore. They're pirates, galactic parasites. You know, is what they are. And soul grabbers, and probably everything else. Things we just don't know because we're the little bugs in the rug here. We have never been able to go outside the rug to see what the rug's all about. But in the same sense, with law and being a federal lawyer, Kurt, that federal law and things that we have to look at, because you're kind of off in between the tribal council law and Rudy L. James, as we've had with our Legal Eagle program here in Don Gran, here in Lake City, has been a great help to us as far as he is the head of the United Nations Tribal Council Relations. I'm sure you know Rudy L. James, right?
Oh, yeah, I know Rudy. He's a good
guy. Man. He's a truly great man. And it's been a lot of help to all of us as far as trying to help us get things put together for things. And I also want a project that I've got proposed from John DeNorsha. He's a very close associate of mine. John's got an idea for helping put together a Native Nations Network television program. And that was based on us 2 years ago, looking at trying to help create, because we noticed that the Cayuga Seneca tribe have had problems with corruption in their elections. And as you know, the 14 Seneca tribes control one of the largest casino operations in the world. That they're interested in us helping them to put together a Native Nations Network program, which would also help to bring a little bit more credibility to their elections. But apparently, because the Native Nations citizens are not aware that these organized crime syndicates have been moving in to take it over, or should I say already have, and are filtering out or laundering, should I say, billions of dollars from these tribal casinos. Of course, what can you expect from here? And members of what they thought were tribes weren't even members of the tribe, controlling it. And then the members that were paid off were using the funds, hundreds of millions of dollars, to pay for their own private investments. How's that? We'll talk about that one later, and maybe you and I and John can talk about this as far as helping put something together in architecture for the Native Nations Network television network. We'll put that on your list.
Well, I work with the Native American Justice Project.
You do? Okay.
I do.
Yeah.
And I'm on the board.
Okay.
And we do a lot of work up in Alaska, as well as a lot of the other states, the lower 48 as well. But we do a lot of work with Alaskan tribes. And with the Native American Justice Project, we have been successful in removing cases, criminal cases even, to tribal courts, and then filing them as foreign judgments in federal district court. We've had some success with that.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
I was arrested and charged with possession of marijuana in Wyoming, a little town called Cokeville, Wyoming. And I was very ill at the time. My friend was driving me to see my family because my brother was dying of lymphatic and small cell lung cancer at the time. And I was too sick to drive. So he was driving me to and from Washington. And we're going through Wyoming. He goes through this little town of Cokeville. We stopped in this little diner. And while we're in a diner, somebody walked behind the rental truck and whacked it with a stick and cracked the taillight. So we get down the road, and lo and behold, we get pulled over for cracked taillight lens. And, you know, Cokeville's that's probably their biggest resource is traffic citations. You know, little towns like that, they tend to make a lot of revenue that way.
Amazing.
And, you know, it's 30-mile-an-hour wind. It's 20-some degrees outside. My friend rolls down the window, and the cop says, "I think I smell marijuana." Where's the marijuana? Well, there's no way he smelled anything. But, you know, as I found out later, the judge told me, "Oh, yeah, we have a directive that the Wyoming officers, and this is not just Wyoming, this is a lot of other states, Idaho is another one of them, they have a directive. And that directive is if you see Washington, Colorado plates, possibly even Montana, but definitely Washington and Colorado, pull them over.
Okay.
Because 1 in 3 chances they're going to have pot in the car. 1 out of 3. And that's what the judge told me. He said, we have a directive. The officers are directed to pull over vehicles with plates from Washington and Colorado. And
that's kind of like how organized crime works, too, isn't it? Kind of the same idea. Yeah.
Exactly. You know, and they figure, and, you know, they pulled us over, and he goes, I think I smell marijuana. And my friend, not being too bright, goes, oh, yeah, I got 6 ounces in the back. So he goes, digs the 6 ounces of the back of the truck, and lo and behold, I get charged with possession of 6 ounces. And so did his girlfriend.
Yeah.
And luckily, the tribe, one of the tribes I was working with out of Alaska, they saw how sick I was. One of them came up and visited and said, man, these guys are coming after you for pot, you know, and you guys, here you're sick and not doing too well, hospice patient. I said, yeah. She goes, well, we'll see what we can do about that. And, you know, I got a friend of mine that put a lot of effort into it and got the case removed to the tribal court, did them an order to show cause. They ignored it, so we did another removal to the tribal Supreme Court, did another order to show cause. They ignored it. So we got a default judgment against them. Then we filed it in federal district court as a foreign judgment. And they were so upset, they wouldn't even talk to me. I called him up, said, you know, I want to know the status of my case. First he hung up on me. And I called him back, and I said, listen, I want to know the status of my case. He goes, you know the status of your case. I'm not telling you nothing. So, yeah, they get a little upset when you go over their head. And they did the same thing for my Supreme Court case here in Colorado. The tribe also removed that and dismissed it. So tribes can have effective court systems, you know, and I helped establish the tribal court for this tribe. So, you know, they didn't want me to die on them. So we can't.
Well,
can't have you dying on us, man.
There's approximately 480-something tribal jurisdictions, judicial jurisdictions. Am I wrong? Something like that?
I think it's more than that.
Is it more than that?
Yeah.
And these are actual courts of law.
Yeah.
For real.
Well, the Kikialis tribe, my tribe that I'm chief of, we have our own tribal court.
Right.
We have tribal judges. We have a tribal prosecutor. And, we take cases in our court, handle all different kinds of cases.
What I'm seeing here happening with this so-called federal shutdown, this so-called current crime syndicate that's in office, how else can you explain it? The amount of corruption you're seeing is
we need to eliminate all Republicans and Democrats and say, you know what, we're going to vote for anybody that isn't a Republican or Democrat.
Right.
And start up the Bull Moose Party again that Teddy Roosevelt was so well known for.
As we're seeing the collapse of this so-called bureaucracy based on extreme greed, corruption, power, international interests like the Rothschild, Rockefeller, Vatican, now the Vatican, we're finding is that all this is based on trusts with the Vatican Bank. And apparently the Pope doesn't even, Jesuits do not even recognize not only the Bible, they apparently don't even recognize Jesus Christ. And the Catholic people don't even know that. And not only are they a military intelligence organization, but apparently they're behind the Knights Templar and the Masonic Order and all this kind of stuff, and apparently are the greatest mass murderers in history, apparently. I'm just saying it because of what I read in the independent news and research that I've done, in the fact that my entire estate was stolen by parties named Rochelle Perask, Vance Boudreau, Joe Eisen, attorney in Houston, Michael S. Kunath and his firm Kunath, Karen Atkins, and Kunath, Karen Atkins and Rinnie, or Kunath, Karen Rinnie and Atkins. I was their first client. They took it upon themselves, not knowing that I thought the Jesuits were a holy order. Oh, yeah, right. They started using me for target practice with mind control, weapons. I was being used as target practice. And my Ashkenazi wife, Jennifer Ann Cohn, C-O-H-N, was putting chemical lobotomy in my food. How does that work? You're supposed to trust these Ashkenazis? You know, those people that comprised of Israel. The hitmen for Rothschild in the Middle East. The guys who want to blow up this entire planet and kill all the human life on it. These guys, the same people that destroyed my life. I'm still here. What kind of miracle is that? But obviously we do not have what we would consider proper law and order here in this country anymore. And we need to rebuild.
Takeover.
Oh, yeah. Unbelievable. I call them
for
galactic.
example, Washington State.
Yeah. It was run by the organized crime families.
What's that?
It's run by the mob, the whole state, everything.
Yeah, the original Washington State Constitution clearly lays out that it says no city, county, or state official is allowed to use their authority to enrich any corporation whatsoever.
Yeah.
And it also has a provision in the original Law Constitution of 1878 that says corporate executives and their major controlling stockholders are to be held criminally liable for the actions of the corporation.
Right.
Now, if we were enforcing that Constitution, every corporate executive damn near would be in prison.
Hey, Kurt, we've got about a minute and a half for this segment. You ready to do another segment after this one?
Sure.
All right, so in the meantime, I want everyone to realize in about a minute we're going to switch over for a quick break, and then, Kurt, we're going to go into some really interesting things that I think are what's happening in this world today. My key is when I worked with Dr. Yul Brown, hydroxy gas, please go online, go educate yourselves at YouTube about this while you can, as that the only water that will be usable here in the future will be deep underground aquifer and possibly Brown's gas water. By the way, it is superhydrated. Superhydrated water, what's that mean? It means that we may live a lot longer than we're used to, have much more sustainable agriculture using it, and it may be the only water we'll have to access, and we can run our entire communities on it. We'll get into that in a few minutes here, Kurt. As we get ready for this next segment, and hang in there, everybody. Kurt will be right back, and so will I. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, hold on. We're just a couple of things here I'm going to do real fast, and we'll get ready for the next segment.
Good. I'll take a quick joke here.
I wish I had one. I hear you.
Oh, I had a good crop this year.
Did you? Good.
All my plants were dead by the 1st of May, middle of May. All my plants were dead. And I had the old lady plant some seeds while I was in Seattle on June 21st, and shit, one of them got to be 10 feet tall.
No kidding. Yeah.
Yeah. From June 21st, it was a seed, and I harvested it yesterday, and the damn thing was 10 feet tall.
Really?
Yeah. Produced almost a pound.
Wow. That's amazing. It's amazing things. I'd like you at some point in time to get to know Matthew Gordon. I've been working with him and Don Darrington, Choice Wellness here in the North Seattle area on the old Toby strain. The guy's quite a wonder. He's kind of a savant when it comes to strain creation.
What strain?
The old Toby strain. He's a savant.
Ask him if you ever heard of the Ghost.
The Ghost?
Ghost strain.
Well, I'll tell you, sometime in the future, maybe we'll do a program with him and have you kind of give him some advice and things he should know, because they're trying to steal the strain from him. Don Darrington's supposed to be the only one at Choice Wellness to distribute it here in the North in Washington. And there's all these characters that have clamped on and claiming they're the ones that have it, and and he's got a legal mess that he has to deal with. I'd like you to help get to know who he is, as far as observing how these rats are trying to steal old Toby from you.
Oh yeah, if you get anything decent, somebody's always going to try to.
Oh yeah. Well, we know who the parasites are. Yeah. Anyway, all right. So here we are. We're going to get ready for another segment here on your marks. Hold a sec. Let me write down how. 15, 30. Okay. Hi, it's All Day Live. As I turn my mic down a little bit, this is the second part of our show for this week in October. And we're greatly honored to have Kurt-Riggin-'s tribal and federal lawyer. And like I've mentioned, it's not usually where you see somebody that the judicial systems that we have now observed being extremely corrupt today, out of control, and a system collapsing, that they would be scared of someone like Kurt, but they apparently are. Usually we're the ones that are supposed to be afraid of them. That's the way they like it. Isn't that the way organized crime syndicates work when they've taken over and now call themselves the judicial system, the political system, the banking system, the business system? I mean, am I wrong? Me being a target, we're all being targeted. Like, how does that work? We're all supposed to be targets? I thought we're citizens in a free republic with our rights protected, not rightless. We're supposed to be rightful. Am I wrong, Kurt? I'm greatly honored to have you on for the second segment for All Day Live. And as we've mentioned, circumstances occurring right now, as we've looked at not only the fact that we could add addendums to the Senate farm bills for organic certification. Of course, they won't listen, but that would be something. And would it take it off of Schedule 1 if they did that?
If they did what now?
It would be, if they were to apply, let's say, file addendums in the U.S. Senate, state senates to recertify cannabis and hemp.
Reschedule it.
Reschedule it.
Yeah, it would take it off Schedule 1. They could put it into Schedule 2. I mean, here's what's funny. What do they say that pot is? What's the big scare about pot?
Right.
It's a gateway drug, right?
Yep.
You ever heard that term?
Yep.
Marijuana is a gateway drug.
Well, it could be a gateway to health. Yep.
Gateway drug to harder drugs, right?
No, to health.
That's the theory. They're saying, well, it's a gateway drug to harder drugs. Well, if it's a gateway drug to harder drugs, and cocaine and methamphetamines is a Schedule 2 drug, and marijuana is a Schedule 1 drug, then it must be a gateway drug to lesser harmful drugs, right?
Yeah.
Because cocaine and meth and a lot of other drugs are Schedule 2 drugs.
Yeah.
Where marijuana, it's really bad. It's a Schedule 1 right next to LSD and heroin.
Right.
No medical use whatsoever. But now Washington and Colorado are going, oh yeah, we're going to legislate regulation for this weed, for this illegal Schedule 1 drug that we have under our own state schedule. So we're going to ignore that portion of the law that says that it's a Schedule 1 drug just like heroin and LSD, and we're going to regulate it without changing the law. So we're going to piss on this law and violate it so we can make money and ignore it. It's like, wait a minute. How do you enforce one law that you just make up so you can prosecute somebody under another law that's been on the, it doesn't make any sense. They can violate all the laws they want as long as it's in the name of revenue. Oh, we got to make more revenue. And this is for good revenue, so therefore we should be able to commit perjury, official misconduct. Why shouldn't we? It's for the better good, right?
Right.
And that's the game they're playing. And unfortunately, most people aren't smart enough to realize that.
Well, people are not aware, Kurt, that we are in an actual extinction event right now. And it's a lot more serious than a bunch of greedy pigs, and I mean that's why they call them pigs in the so-called law enforcement apparatuses around the country and the so-called fake federal corporate apparatuses we call NSA, FBI, which got caught running the largest pedophile porn industry in the world. Though they claimed it was just for certain, no, it wasn't. That's how corrupt this place is.
Well, do you know the CIA opened up an office here in Denver, but not until they changed their name.
Yeah.
Do you know that?
Yeah, well, they were created by the Jesuits.
It was in the Denver Post, dude.
Yeah.
They published the story in the Denver Post. They said the CIA, formerly CIA, now currently known as the NRA.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, the CIA is now known as the NRA, the National Resource Agency.
Yeah, I think I read
and they have an
something about
office in Denver.
Amazing, isn't it? It's amazing.
And you can look it up.
Yeah.
They published the story in the Denver Post, how the CIA is now called the NRA, and they have an office. Now, why would the CIA, a foreign intelligence agency for the government, open an office in Denver under the NRA? Because we are the enemies. That's why.
Well, it's part of the agenda.
You ever heard of the Trading with the Enemies Act?
Yeah.
It's in full force.
Well, Agenda 21 and then the so-called crossstone, the stones with the scribed information on them in Norcross, Georgia, I believe it is. The
Georgia Guidestones.
Georgia Guidestones mentioned 500 million. Well, obviously they look at us as just cattle, and that they've basically taken over the entire concept of what we call banking and business, and they're going to cull the herd. Apparently, we're just a herd. Sheeples.
Yeah. Yeah, they got way too many people on the planet, and they can't control them. And if people got wind as to what exactly was going on here, if they got wind that the King County Finance Corporation owned the building that the courthouse sits on, owned the property that the building sits on, owned the property that the sheriff office sits on.
Yep.
And that they're a for-profit corporation registered with Dun & Bradstreet with a DUNS number.
Yeah.
You got to ask yourself, how does a for-profit corporation operate a court system? In the original Constitution of the State of Walla from 1878, it states very clearly and unequivocally that any actions on behalf of the state of Washington must be in the name of the state of Washington.
Really?
So it says.
Okay.
Now, go look at any document you get from the state that's a charging document in any way, shape, or form. You know what it says?
What?
It says State of Washington.
Right.
Now, Constitution says if any action, any legal action on behalf of the state must be in the name of the state of Washington.
Interesting.
Not the state of Washington. State of Washington is an all-capital letter, for-profit corporation registered with Dun & Bradstreet. Did you know that?
Yeah.
We're dealing with the corporate takeover of our country. And what they did is we had an original Constitution that made it real clear that corporations had no business running our country. Our politicians and our city, county, and state officials are to be held criminally liable. They cannot use their powers or authorities to enrich any corporation whatsoever. It doesn't say except municipal corporations. It says any corporation whatsoever. And that's why they buried the Walla Walla Constitution of 1878 in miscellaneous document number 55 of the National Archives. That's where I found it. And I was the first guy to check that box out since 1901.
Wow.
The last time that box had been checked out in the National Archives was in 1901, and I checked it out in 2001. And you know what the archivist told me? Oh, well, we can't give that to you. I said, what? What are you talking about? He goes, oh, we somebody already checked it out, and somebody else already has it. I go, who? He goes, a guy named Lewis Ewing. I said, really? Wait right here. So I walked about 50 feet over. I grabbed Lewis by the ear and said, dude, you need to get your ass over here right now. And I drug him over there, and I said, now, tell me again, who checked out this box so I can't see it? That's checked out the Lewis Ewing. I said, well, this is Lewis Ewing right here, and he wants to know where his box is. And then he got all kinds of freaked out and said, listen, we're holding it to investigate what's in that box. I said, listen, asshole, I checked the box out. I want it now. I don't want it tomorrow. I want it now. And I don't want you taking shit out of it, because I know what's in it. It's your miscellaneous box, and the only place that the constitutions for all these western states can be is in that box, and I want it. And he says, you're not getting it. So I called the head of the National Archives. It was the second time I'd called him that day. Because the first time, we all showed up at the National Archives, and you know what they told us? Well, we need to see your National Archives cards. We said, well, we don't have one. None of us do. We just came here from Seattle, Washington, you know. We came here as a group of 6 guys to do research for the Washington State Historical Society and a number of tribes, Washington State tribes. So we're here to do research. And they said, sorry, you got to go up to the 2nd floor to get a research card. And you can't get in without a research card.
Amazing.
Now, do you get that little logic loop they got going on?
Right. Yeah.
You got to get you got to make it to the 2nd floor to get a card, but you can't get in without a card. So I said, really? Well, you know, being a Montana boy, I'm really not one to take no for an answer. Seeing as I just flew from Seattle to Washington, D.C., and so I called the head of the National Archives, and I said, I need your address, and I need your home address, as well as your business address. He goes, well, why would you need that? I said, because I need to know where to serve you with the lawsuit that I'm going to be suing you with tomorrow. Why would you sue me? And I said, because you have a policy that is racist in its nature and makes it impossible for Native Americans to get in and do research on their treaties. I said, we just flew all the way here from Seattle, and if we can't get in to do research on our treaties, we're going to sue you tomorrow, because we got nothing better to do. Since we can't research, we're going to start filing suits. He said, I'll be right down. He came down and escorted us up to the 2nd floor so we could get our cards. Really nice guy.
Yeah.
So when I called him the 2nd time and said, hey, you boys are trying to pull a fast one on me. You know, I ordered a box, now they're saying they're not going to give it to me until they verified its contents. I said, I realize this box hasn't been checked out since 1901, but that's not my problem. And it was 2001 when I did this.
Right.
So I was the first guy to look into contents of that box in over 100 years. In exactly 100 years. And it had a seal on it. So they had a couple guys standing over me, and they let me pop open the seal with my white gloves on and everything, and I pulled out the original Constitution of 1878 for Walla Walla. That was miscellaneous document number 55. The Montana Constitution, Oregon, Idaho, South Dakota, North Dakota, Colorado, Nevada, Utah, all these western states, I pulled the constitutions for them. And here they were miscellaneous documents. They were buried in this box in the National Archives for 100 years in the miscellaneous document file.
Amazing.
So what they did is they had a little meeting. All our politicians got their little heads together. They buried our original state constitutions in the miscellaneous documents files of the National Archives. and they initiated a constitution from 1898 that created a corporation known as State of Washington, State of Montana, State of Idaho, State of Oregon, State of South Dakota, State of North Dakota, not the state of. And effectively, they did a corporate takeover of our country. That's why when you go into court and you say, hey, you're violating my constitutional rights, this is a clear violation of the Constitution, the judge can actually say, you don't have any constitutional rights in this court. They can say it and mean it because you're not a citizen. And that ain't a court. It's a court, but it's a corporation.
So what they're going to do is get ready to use this for their Agenda 21, where they're going to start hauling.
Here's the remedy, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. We can force these corporations out of business. And I'm perfecting that now. I'm working on a corporation known as the Cognac Corporation. It was created by Congress under the Alaskan Claims Settlement Act. Now, the Cognac Corporation, for just one tribe that I know of, okay, I'm working with one specific tribe under the Cognac Corporation. The Cognac Corporation has received $17 million on behalf of this tribe. Now, you know how much they paid out to the tribe in 30 years? $47,000. Really?
Yeah.
The tribes received $47,000 out of $17 million earmarked for them. Now, Cognac came in and built a $2 million fishing lodge in their village. And then they had the balls to tell them that they had no jurisdiction over them. They said, your tribal court has no jurisdiction over us. Told their tribal members they weren't allowed in the lodge. Oh, if you want a job here, we might pay you a minimum wage to work here, but otherwise you're not welcome here. Now, the interesting part about the tribe I'm working with is that they are one of two tribes that had an existing treaty with Russia when we bought Seward's Folly from Russia. And guess what we had to do in order to buy Alaska? We had to swear that we would uphold the treaties between Russia and Alaska and the Alaskan tribes, these two tribes in particular. You know, no tribes in Alaska have a reservation. None of them. Really? Legally, only two have reservations. And what they did is they said, oh, you're now under Public Law 280 and you no longer have a reservation. We're now handing it over to the, under the Alaskan Claims Settlement Act, we're going to hand it over to this corporation known as Cognac. And they're going to take care of you. Don't worry, in 30 years they should give you almost $50,000 out of the $17 million that we're supposed to pay you. So they got all their buddies, politicians coming up, fishing in their nice $2 million fishing lodge, and they had all the shit going on. Well, we put a stop to that. I said, listen, assholes, you either start working with us and start paying what you're supposed to pay, or we're kicking you out. And he says, screw you, you can't do anything to us, you can't kick us out. Well, see, I kind of worked on a deal where we had, I don't know if you ever watch Alaska State Troopers, that show.
I didn't even know there was one. Go ahead.
Show called Alaska State Troopers. Well, it used to be that in some villages, Alaskan State Troopers would fly into that village. They would beat on somebody's door, pick a door in general, somebody they wanted to search usually, and they'd beat on their door, and if they didn't answer it within, 30 to 45 seconds, they'd kick it in. And they'd say, oh, by the way, you guys didn't answer the door, and we're going to be spending the night here. and they'd camp out overnight in their house. They didn't ask. They just did it. Now, if you're an Alaskan Native out in the middle of nowhere, are you going to put up much of a fight? These guys got guns. They got no problem shooting you. They got bulletproof vests. So they let them stay there. They let them thug them around. They were scared. Every time they flew into the village, everybody got scared. And I'm talking law-abiding citizens were scared of them, not people that were doing anything wrong. So I said, I called them up, said, hey, you guys got to stop this shit. We don't need people up in the village threatening and intimidating villagers. They said, screw you. These are our state patrolmen. There's nothing you can do about it. Well, they didn't know me very well. So the tribe, I worked with the tribe, we banished them. Now, do you know what a banishment is?
Go ahead.
Banishment is when you are, in a tribal village, if you're banished from a village and you show back up in that village, the federal marshals can take you to jail and hold you for almost a year with only a hearing, not a trial. You don't get a trial. It's kind of like real similar to a federal restraining order. If I get a federal restraining order against you and you're a police officer and you kick in my door, I can have the U.S. Marshals take you into custody and hold you for probably close to a year for violating a restraining order.
Really?
And as much as up to 5 years. So same works with banishment. If a tribe banishes somebody, doesn't matter if they're a cop, doesn't matter if they're a state patrolman. If they're caught in that village, they can go to jail, period. And so these guys start calling and begging the tribal members, please, you got to get rid of your tribal court, and you got to remove the banishment so we can continue to work. See, because they were on a loop. They were flying, a regular route to different villages and spending a night at each village, and they'd do like 5 villages in a week. Well, they got banished from one of the villages, so they couldn't spend the night there. They couldn't even stop there. So they had to get 2 new cops to do the route. And now these new state patrolmen, they knock, and they'll sit there for a half an hour. They won't kick in a door. And they say, hey, is there any place we can stay tonight? They're polite. They ask permission. They found out that, if you're an asshole and you push people around, they don't have to put up with it. We can kick you out of our village. And so suddenly now the state patrolmen are much more professional, much more polite, and they're actually nice guys. So it's actually changed the dynamic in some of these villages. Not all the villages had this problem, just a few. And I think it was just a select few cops that had, some of these guys that were, the guys that beat up and took kids' milk money and lunch money in grade school, those guys, ones that generally want to be cops.
Kurt, we've got about 4 minutes left for this segment.
Let's go on to marijuana.
Yeah. One thing that I think is interesting, and due to the fact that if we're going to have an economic currency collapse, China's beckoning to take over. We've got 400,000 Russian troops being trained and equipped and supplied by our Department of Defense here in this country. Apparently there's over 2 million Chinese military stationed south of our border, a couple 100,000 north of our border.
There's a whole bunch of Chinese in Idaho.
Yeah.
You know about that?
So yeah, and I'm sure half our student population are foreign exchange from China. Who knows how many of them are trained. I do have the highest respect for the Chinese and their honor. So there's 2 things on board here. What do we need to know about Native Nations currency, real quick, while we got about a couple of minutes left? What about the Ponca, Lakota currencies now out of North Dakota with its own currency? What do you think? What advice can you give people on that?
Well, we have the Native American Bank here in Denver, and the tribes that have accounts there have a $5 million FDIC coverage, which is pretty nice.
Right.
And they were created by Eloise Cobell and the Eloise Cobell settlement. I don't know if you know about the Eloise Cobell settlement, but Eloise Cobell won $3.4 billion for Native Americans in this country. Because what's an ongoing problem in this country is that if you're a Native American, let's say you have 1,000 acres of land that is trust land being held by the government. What the government does is they lease that land out to oil companies, to ranchers, to farmers, either for agricultural grazing, drilling, even coal mining. And they will collect X amount per acre per year. And let's say it's 30,000 or 3,000. Well, in most cases, like in one friend of mine's case, he has 1,500. He has 1,000 acres, and he got a check for $1,500 for the 30 years that they owed him for.
We've got about a minute and a half left. By the way, it's called the Free Lakota Bank. You guys can find that online, and they provide their own currency. It's based on gram. You just go there and ask them. And also, North Dakota is providing its own banking system now.
And they have coins. They have silver coins as well.
Yes, yeah. And I know that there's going to be a lot of debacle. You're going to have to find yourself providing your knowledge too, as far as this thing gets going and as our dollar collapses. By the way, I did not mention anything that's not true on the air on this show because yes, I was a target, extreme target, people, and and I was not provided any rights whatsoever or judiciary, except all you do is you observe how corrupt our judicial system is, and that you find out that our so-called judges are completely part of a corporation. Most of them sit on the boards of banks. And it's gotten a little bit out of control, people. We're in a extinction event. You need to know that. Don't bring up the circumstances, whatever I say or what Kurt says. It's a matter of now we've got to survive as a people. It's time we recognize it. And then, Kurt, you're one of the premier people in law and judicial understanding as far as cannabis, medical cannabis, and laws. They can get back to you at Kurt-Riggin, no S, Kurt-Riggin at Comcast.net, right?
Yep.
And I hope to have you on, and maybe we can do a lot more media. There's a lot involved with banking, with Agenda 21, things we need to know about jurisdictions, things, a lot. And you're probably one of the people that they need to hear from more often, am I right?
Oh, yeah. Because, unfortunately, people are, they're clueless. They don't see what's going on around them, and they don't realize that, hey, if you start asking questions like, how does this work in law? I mean, how are you guys going to regulate a Schedule I drug under your own schedule without every one of you regulators being felons? And where's your immunity from felony charges for federal law violations? Because you're state officials.
Kurt, we're going to get you on again soon. Let's hope more people will start listening. You think?
Yeah.
And again,
all right,
they can get a hold of you.
Have a good one.
I got your credits up here, Kurt-Riggin at Comcast.net. And they can email you. I'm sure you hope to get more people listening and communicating, right?
Definitely.
Thank you.
Smoke fat and enjoy, people.
Thank you. All day live from Seattle. Thank you for watching. I'm WillPWilson, and we hope to see you next week, or you can see us next week. If you want to come on the show, let me know, and I provide panel discussions. Get back with me. WillPWilson, All Day Live. Thank you for watching.